Welcome to episode 47 of Broad Street Hustle. We got an action-packed show and a big panel here. I'm looking at the board and we haven't had this group together for a while now. So I'm going to move quickly. We're going to cover some Phillies, some Sixers. We're going to talk about that, like I should say, that pitching duel that we saw today up at in Texas, Philly for the Phillies. Then we're going to cover Sixers and Embiid and the MVP talk and what transpired over the last week or so. And then we're going to get into horses. As we said, it is Kentucky Derby season. If you listen to last week's show, the panel here, and I believe one of the guys, might have been Chalky, I'm not sure, I can't remember, gave out Spooky Channel as his top pick, who did win the first leg of the pick three that we talked about. Tough to string together that second leg, as it was only 5-horse field, and I guess it was the second the longest shot won. But then two of us, myself and Jason, gave out Kings Barnes, who somehow paid 9-2. It was like 960, which was great odds. Never in doubt, got an easy pay. So hopefully we can make some money for everyone this week with the late pick four of the Florida Derby, and then we're going to cover the Arkansas Derby. So over at Oaklawn is another 3-year-old prep race. So why don't we jump right into it? I'll go through who I got. As always, co-host Jason Sayeta.
What's up, Tom?
What's up, Jason? I got Jimmy the Chalk.
This may be a sad show unless we talk about the Kelly Greens coming back next year, so we'll see if we can get through it.
You might be able to squeeze it in. And then we got Christopher Michael Meeker back.
Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
How are we? And it's only fitting we're out in Florida to talk about the races, as we got the fountain of youth, the immortal Jimmy D.
Hi, guys. It's great to be back with this esteemed panel. It's always an honor.
I say that because I believe Jimmy D is making his YouTube debut. He's the first time he's been on our YouTube show. So you get to see the golden locks that flow and we could keep going on, but we won't.
So, is that the color they are this week, Tom?
That's the beauty of when you get older. You can make them whatever color you want.
We can always do something in post-production if necessary.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump right into it. So I actually had some stuff to talk about the Phillies, but first I can't not talk about the start. The first game of the season was today. I think I saw a number or stat. I forget the years, but it was the first time in X amount of years, Chalky probably knows, that all 32 teams debuted on the same day, which was pretty wild. So you had all 32 starting their first game today, which I thought was interesting. And Phillies were one of them out in Texas, where they jumped on a lead and then they kind of just fell apart. So, Jason, kick us off. First impressions. Is the season? Are we in for a long season? Do we overreact after game one, or do we relax?
Time to sell, I think. Fire Thompson. And no, I mean, listen, it's disappointing. The offense jumped out to a big lead, like you said. Bohm had a huge game. Looks like the weight that he put on is going to help him to get some more pop in his bat, which is great. He looked really good. JT had a nice game offensively. He had a terrible pass ball, but he had a nice game offensively. Trey Turner is I am such a fan of that guy. I think he's the best player in the National League. I really do. I mean, that triple he hit was a single for most, a double for some, and a triple for Trey Turner. I mean, that was just incredible how he got the third on that ball. But Nola was cruising along, and then he just hit a wall. He hit a wall in that fourth inning, and I think he hit a wall, and Thompson should have pulled him. I mean, everybody was all over Thompson for pulling Wheeler early in the World Series, and now they're going to be all over him for letting all stay in the game. He should have pulled him. He was out of gas. I mean, he brought in that Soto, who they could send him back to Detroit for all I care. He was horrendous. But that was it. Soto came in. He was wild. Got a couple of blue pits off of him, and next thing you know, it's 9-5. So it's one game. It's just frustrating that to start the season on a sour note like that. But offensively, they're going to be fine. It's just you have to worry about the pitching staff.
How about you, Meeker? First impression?
I mean, I pulled a lot of positives out of the game, even though Nola hit the wall, like Jason said, and should have been pulled. One thing that I'm just noticing, and as before I came here, I was listening to Steve Sachs on Mad Dog Sports Radio. He was saying that he didn't think that MLB's averages were going to go up this year, and he gave his reasons for it. But after watching this game today, without the shift and certain rule changes, I have to disagree with that. I saw at least 5 to maybe 6 hits between the Rangers and Phillies in this game that would have been outs if the shift was employed. And so, I kind of think of like, oh, they're doing this to create offense. They're doing this for lots of different reasons, but and the pitch clock and all these things are trying to speed up the game, but I think there's going to be a lot of offense. So in the end, I think some of these games are going to end up going long anyway, but they're going to go long in a more exciting way because there's just going to be more offense. I mean, I look around the league and some of the scores today, aside from a few shutouts that I've seen on the scoreboard, there's a lot of 10-9, 10-8, 9-8 games already, and these are the number one starters for these teams, So we'll see how this goes. And I'm just talking about baseball in general. But look, like Jason said, it's one game. Nola's just got to bounce back the next game, and these guys shouldn't be going any more than 4 innings in their first start anyway. And he was right at that point. And but the bullpen didn't look good. This is kind of the front end of the bullpen, not the back end. So we're seeing something we thought was a strength, and maybe it's. Well, I mean, I can't judge it from one game, but today it wasn't a strength. Let's put it that way. But I love Turner, especially me and Jason were texting back and forth about how much of a stud this guy is. That triple that he hit, just the way he rounded the bases, the path he took was just precise. Like you said, that's a triple, and if it's a double, like with 2 outs and it's or 1 out and it's a triple with 1 out, it's easy to get the run home. And obviously he throws a wild pitch and he scores. So he manufactured a run with his legs, which we haven't seen a player in Phillies uniform do in quite some time. So I'm really excited to see him play 162 games this year.
Okay. Chalky, first impressions.
I mean, it was an enjoyable 3.5 or so innings to start the season. And I think they pointed on the broadcast that Hall made a decent play at first base and had to cut like Nola off, and they said like after that it seemed like Nola kind of lost his concentration or somewhere. That's when things started to turn. I don't know that he didn't hit him. I mean, like get injured, but I just thought it was interesting they pointed that out. I mean, look, it'll be a fun year hopefully to watch. I think Crux said this is probably the most fun team, could be the most fun team since 2008, which 2011 was pretty fun up until like the last 2 weeks in playoffs as they steamrolled the league. But look, it's one game. It could be worse. We could be the Braves where they lost Max Fried. We could be the Mets who lost Verlander for, not for the season, but for some time right off the bat. And the Rangers, for whatever reason, last year and starting this year, they have the Phillies number. And who would have thought that the Phillies would have, the worst thing that could have happened to the Phillies was that DeGrom doesn't go 4 innings or whatever it was that he ended up going. So, whatever. It's good to have baseball back. They'll, I'm not jumping to any conclusions. And if they get swept, then the season will be over. But they got a couple more games left.
Well, it's encouraging that they hit DeGrom today. I mean, they did what they had to do against him.
I mean, I think it was a group I was texting, like, that first inning, like Schwarber or Turner strikes out on three strikes. Schwarber and the strike zone was the size of Texas. Like stuff is like 2 feet outside, and they're calling it a strike. And Nola got some calls too as it went on. But I'm like, oh god, it's going to be one of these days already where it's just like And then they got rolling after that. But I mean, look, their bullpen held up. Ours did not, and. It blinked and it was like 2 home runs and it was 11-6 or whatever. And it was, but hey, it's game one.
You got what's his face hitting opposite field home runs. The guy the Phillies had. Brad Miller.
Yeah.
They got, they robbed the home run off of, what's his name? Creed or whatever, so.
You referenced 2011's fun season. You remember what the opening day of that season was? It was a walk-off.
I just
heard it.
And Francisco, right?
No. So Ben
Is that
Francisco.
Dominic Brown?
It was what's Mabry?
Oh,
John
Maybury.
Mabry.
That
And
was
Ben
against Houston, right?
And
Yeah.
and Ben Francisco scored. So I heard that
Okay.
highlight today. I was like, geez, that team was good. When their first highlight is John Mabry or whatever and Ben Francisco.
They played a little bit better after that, but yeah.
And then how about you, Jimmy? First impressions of the
You know,
season.
you try not to lose your head after the first game. Obviously, you know we're big fans down here, and I'm not a homer kind of guy, but the Phillies, I make an exception. I just like the Phillies, but I'm hoping against hope. I think Trey Turner's the real deal. I think you're right. Um, but you know, you look at that. You look at Nola, and you know he's so disappointing. He's got every skill set in the world, and he hits a wall. You guys had just said he hits a wall. How many times have we said that? We say it every time the wind blows strong in the fourth inning. This guy somehow or another hits a wall, and then he loses his cool, which is really it, embryonic. It's systematic that this guy continues to lose because every big game, come to the end of the year, he looks like he's out of gas. Now it's every fourth or fifth inning he looks like he's out of gas after he pitches spectacularly in 3 innings. It's hard to to accept or to fathom. Soto was really disappointing. Especially if Verling and Maton have great seasons. That'll be typical Philadelphia mistake. But I don't think we should lose our heads. The Mets lineup doesn't look like murderer's row to me. And if they do lose, they lost Diaz earlier with the WBC, and if they do lose Scherzer for a point in time, and the Braves with Fried, I guess by uh, elimination we're getting better. But I don't think the Phillies have that extra something. When you lose 60 home runs, you're losing it from Hoskins and you're losing it from Bryce Harper. It's hard to make up. And you say, well, Bryce is coming back maybe mid-year, maybe earlier. But I don't. You're losing that from the jump, and you got a guy like Derek Hall in there, untested, unproven. You start on opening day, Jake Cave. It's difficult. This looks to me, and I hate to say this is an infamia, but this looks like an 80-win team to me.
Yeah, I got a lot of who is Cave text today, so I had to do some googling
He almost hit a
myself.
home run. Yeah, he's not good, but he almost.
Yeah, we robbed them of a home run at the
Guy
end.
robbed them. Yeah.
I mean, remember last year they started the season 22-29, so it's not like you could show what happens. I'm not going to really add too much. The one thing I'll say is the pitch count. So Nola was a guy who kind of balked at it a little bit in spring training. I know it was like a big thing for him to work on it. He was, I guess, a slow type of pitcher. If you remember, he would pick up the rosin bag after every pitch. He would sweat like a hog during So it could be just adjustments. I mean, same for relievers, but both teams and the whole league's facing that right now. And that could be one of the reasons why you saw offense, like you said, Meeker. I do think it's going to take time for these players, these pitchers especially, to get into that pitch count rhythm. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how that goes. But let me ask you guys a question. So, Phillies went to the World Series last year unexpectedly, right? So how do you come into this season? So obviously we watch every Philadelphia season. We expect the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. We expect the Phillies to win the World Series. We expect the Flyers to participate. We expect the Sixers to win a championship. And if they don't win, we're disappointed. But we go into certain seasons with like a mindset, like, all right, this team's not winning, but I would be happy with a playoff. We were, I think, even last year with the Phillies, we were probably most of us said, if they make the playoffs this year, that's a good start. Where are you, Jason? What do you think? Is it World Series? They don't win the World Series, and it's a failure of a season. I mean, I guess part of it is how the journey, but
Yeah.
overall,
Well, I mean, obviously, like you said, I mean, we think that they spend enough money and put together a good enough roster to win a World Series. Now, is it a disappointment if they don't? Yeah. I mean, is it a failure? I don't think it's a failure. I mean, a failure to me would be, not making the playoffs or, making the wild card and losing the wild card round. Or, that's a failure. But if you I mean, even if you lose to the Braves in the NLCS, I don't know if that's a failure. Um, so, I have high hopes. I still do. I think it's one game. I think you need to worry about Suarez, right? You need to worry about Suarez because if he's not right, then you're going to need a pitcher. Um, I think Harper will be back before we know it. I could see Harper back, you know, early May. That's my prediction. I think.
Yeah, it was funny when you saw the shots of him in the dugout
Yeah, I
later
think
in the game.
he's.
He looked kind of a little like disappointed where the game kind of went,
Yeah,
and he wanted to be out there.
I think
sure.
he'll be back before mid-May, early May is my prediction. So, to me, again, it's just you have to worry about the pitching staff. I mean that's my whole thing. I think the bullpen will be fine. This Soto, maybe he's not used to coming in the fourth inning of games. He's used to coming in the eighth or ninth inning. He's going to have to get used to it because that's going to be his
Yeah,
role.
sometimes too with the bullpen, when you jump out to a 5-0 lead and you got Nola on the mound, those guys are in the bullpen joker. Like the last thing they think is to start the fourth inning,
Yeah, it was
I'm
a
going to be
total
pitching.
collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like holy crap! Now I gotta jump up and get
Yeah.
ready. And now they're rushing. to
Five
get ready.
nothing. Nola gave up no hits in the first 3 innings.
Right.
And then all of a
So-
sudden it's 5-5
So
and you're coming.
it's
into the
not like
game.
they're not ready. Their arm's not ready, but their mindset isn't right. They're in a whole different mindset.
Yeah.
So I mean that plays a part.
Yeah.
They're professionals.
Yeah, I think the bullpen's fine. I think the concern right now is your starting staff because of the injury to Suarez.
Yeah. How about you, Chalky? Are we looking at a World Series, or at least go in the World Series or bust, or can we?
No, I mean, to me, unless there's a lot more injuries, 80 wins or whatever that Jimmy said to me would be disappointing. Like that's not even 500. So no, I mean, I picked San Diego to come out of it. So World Series would be great. I'd say probably overperforming a little bit, but to make it, let alone win it. So no, not bust, not to make the playoffs or to be a 500 club would be a bust. Is there a little bit of urgency? I guess in some sense, okay, you got some young arms. Painter, we'll see what happens this year, but surprisingly to me, that it seemed like they were somewhat aggressive in trying to extend Nola before the season started, which. I mean, knew he was a free agent coming up, but I thought maybe this is the point where you start looking ahead. If you're not going to bring him back, there's a couple of free agent pitchers. But who knows what'll happen by that point next year?
Guy in Milwaukee that's unhappy that I would take over Nola.
Well, there's a couple. I mean, look, I've said I doubt he gets to the market, but Urias is a free agent. If he gets to the market, I'd give him a blank check and say, "Come here and
no
pitch."
doubt.
But Wheeler only has a year after this too, so it's like okay, like. He'll be 30-something. You don't have 5 aces in the minors like they did, or they thought they did when they had Myers and Hamels and all that crew, and of course doesn't pan out. So there's urgency to win in the next few years. It doesn't have to be this year. So no, not winning the World Series or even getting there is not necessarily a bust to me.
Jimmy D, I guess 75 wins would be a disappointing season for you. But
Guys, you're more optimistic than me, and again, like I'll repeat that I'm a Phillies fan. I don't see it. When you have to go out and get Christian Posh, when you had Scott Kingery and Cody Clemens, tells you all you need to know about Scott Kingery and Cody Clemens. You've got nothing there. So consequently, they stopped contract negotiations with Aaron Nola. Thank God. The guy can't get to the third inning. You want him to get to the 7th or 8th or 10th year? You're nuts. This guy doesn't have it. He's got nothing below his waistline. That's his problem, Aaron Nola. And it's always going to be that way. He's always a disappointment. And if we lose Zach Wheeler this year, just imagine, it happened last year, just imagine, then we're going to start Matt Strahm, Bailey Falter, and Taiwan Walker. It doesn't look like 80 wins to me. It looks like an abysmal type of season, and I can't bear that. I can't bear to hear my wife if that happens. I can't bear to hear anything. And I'm a partial season ticket holder. I can't bear to sit my ass on that stadium while this team is just faltering. I just don't see it. I wish I could. I wish I had a little bit more optimism. I think Dombrowski made a couple of mistakes this year. He's hoping against hope. We lost Painter. And, that was the surprise. That was that fifth starter, that effervescence, that youth that was coming into the lineup. We don't have that now. Now, when's he coming back? And when if Harper comes back early, is he going to come back healthy? Is he going to try to overachieve as Bryce Harper always does? I mean, he's the consummate ball player. We know that. You know, I understand everybody got excited about Trey Turner, and no doubt he's the real deal. And if they can ever put something else together on the back end, it'll be fine. But this team's going to lose games before the sixth inning. This bullpen's not going to matter.
Meeker, finish us off. What would be a disappointment or expectation or disappointment?
Well, usually going into a season, you would say, whatever you did last season, you have to take a step forward the season after that for it to not be a disappointment. But because it was so unexpected, like you said, basically they'd have to win the World Series for most people to say, well, they improved on last season. But, when we did our baseball special, I had them in second. I think, you know, from an expectation point of view of what I actually think about this team, it would be a team that finishes below the Braves, maybe by 3 or 4 games, above the Mets by a couple games, makes it to the wild card round, gets through that, and maybe loses in round two. But, that's what I expect. Is it disappointing if that happens? Well, if it's what I expect, I guess it's not disappointing. But I think, to most fans, at least getting to the World Series or the NLCS or winning the World Series is really what we need for it to be not a disappointment. But for me, I'm just looking at what I expect. Could they get further? Sure. But yeah, you have some concerns, injury concerns, obviously, and they have to toe the line until Harper gets back. I mean, if they're slightly above 500 team when Harper gets back and they take off after that, you know, sky's the limit. But at the same time, Jimmy D makes a good point. You get one injury in that staff, and I think you're going to be worried.
Can I just follow up with Meeker on something? So the Steve Sachs thing you said,
Yeah.
I did not hear that, but is his thought that the batters are not going to have time to kind of, think about what they want to do, and they're just going to be swinging wildly at stuff? Like they're not going to be able to contemplate like they're at bat. Like if you get
No.
knocked down, you're down 0-2 in the count. Now you got to instead of being able to think about what you want to do, you're swinging it. Whatever.
He didn't bring up anything about pitch clocks or anything like that. He was just saying they were really talking about the shift and whether the shift being banned, or changed, how that's going to raise averages like it did in spring training. But his whole point was that the mentality of the baseball player, if you're not hitting into a shift and you're trying to now convert back to what the old times were, there's going to be a difference of your mentality at the plate. Like you have to adjust accordingly to the fact that there isn't a shift now. And he was saying, and all that stuff is going to even out. My opinion is with pitchers, I think, especially pitchers usually pitch to the fact of where their defense is located, right? So I think, I don't know that it's going to matter as much. I do think there's going to be a little bit of a raise in average, but maybe not as much as what the pundits think, because pitchers are going to pitch a little differently, knowing that their defense is now a pure defense rather than pitching towards a shift. So, that was part of what Sachs was saying too. They're saying 15 points per, on a batting average. I don't see it being 15 points. I think that's a little bit.
Well, certain guys.
Yeah, I mean,
like a guy like Schwarber and Harbor.
Schwarber,
Right.
yeah.
The thing
guys
is,
that
though,
bowlers.
there might have been some guys, but like the Schwarbers and the Harbors, they didn't change their approach because there was a
Yeah,
shift.
they
They
were hitting
swung.
rockets, too,
They swung
into
as
the
hard
shift.
as they could and tried to pull the ball.
Yeah.
So by default,
Well,
they should.
they are who they are. Like they are dead pull
And
hitters, right?
and I think
So-
most of the guys that they played those over exaggerated shifts for sure didn't change their approach. I definitely think you'll see an increase in average, but I do think this pitch clock is a big. I think it's a big deal. I don't think we really know. It might take a full season till we see where the advantage is. I mean, I think it's going to be player to player. It's going to be pitcher to pitcher. Like Jason's point, I mean, Harper's
you know
a guy that stepped out of the box, fixed his batting gloves, put the bat between his legs. I'm sure He wasn't
Yeah.
doing it because his gloves were. He's thinking about, all right, this next pitch is going to be
Yep.
this or that. It's and that could we don't know how that's going to affect a guy like him, and you don't know does Nola. Maybe this is Nola. Maybe he never figures out how to as Jimmy said, as later in games as he got tired, him playing slower may have helped with his fatigue,
Yep.
his breathing, his and this pitch count may. So we don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it is or isn't. I'm just saying I don't think I. It's one of those
Well,
unknowns.
apparently you just have to fake the pitch thing in your hat going off, and then you can take all the time you
I didn't
want
see.
or
Oh,
whatever.
there's going to be some
Well,
loopholes. You better believe it.
well,
One thing I want to mention.
Noah's got to fake when
Yeah.
September is.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is it's kind of an underrated rule. I think that's going to affect pitchers and maybe increase offense is the fact that they can't throw over to first base as often, right? So they may be a little bit more worried about quick runners at first base when they know they can't keep them close, which is really changing the game more than we really think, and having the rush pitches and putting them in bad locations. I think that's the biggest rule change I think that's going to affect pitching because these guys are already on base. So we were talking about more runs. Yeah, they have to worry about guys on base and not being able to throw over as much as they are used to. That's going to be I don't know that it's going to
Yeah,
increase stolen bases, yes, but I think it's just going to increase offense overall because pitchers aren't going to be
yeah.
concentrating enough.
I was talking to somebody about that today. The only thing I'll say is that yeah, I definitely think you add that in with the pitch count, so they're not even going to have the ability to think about like, all right, am I going to throw over? But at the same token, you're going to have pitchers who throw over and they throw over twice, right? And now they have the next time they can't throw over the guy's safe. But at the same token, I think you're going to see base runners start to cheat more and take more extended leads, knowing all right if they try to throw over and they're I mean, if a pitcher thinks I'm going to get this guy because his lead is, they're going to know the markings on the field. If he's at this spot, I have a higher percentage to throw him out. And you're going to see a base runner cheat, and then the pitcher, because they can throw over that third time, they just got to get him out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if he gets back and he's safe, he advances. So, if you get a runner who thinks, all right, I got the advantage, I'm going to cheat, and he takes a little too much of a lead, but at the same token, the pitcher has to make that decision quick because that pitch clock is running and they
Yep.
might not want to risk the throw. So yeah, I think that brings a ton of intrigue into the game. And it's one again. I don't think we know who the advantage is, what players, what teams. Is it going to decide a big game somewhere? It should be interesting. I mean, as we see more of the play in the game, I think we'll get a better idea. But definitely could factor in as we go on.
Yeah.
All right. Anything to wrap this Phillies conversation up in a bow before we move on to the Sixers? Any final thoughts?
I didn't even know Steve Sachs was still around. So I guess I'm
Is that the
happy.
same one from the Simpsons?
I was going to say last I heard he was serving 20 consecutive life sentences in Springfield Correctional Facility
That's
for
the
those
first
that
thing
get the reference. But yeah,
What did he do? Kill somebody in the first row with his throw from second base? What did he get?
Nah,
Oh.
this softball. I love it.
yeah,
You gotta watch the Simpsons.
you got to watch the
It's
series.
Oh,
But yeah.
okay. Okay.
funny. All
And
right.
Tom,
well,
the last word I'll say is 80 and 82.
all right. It's on record
boy.
of 82. Hey, I mean,
Mass suicide.
it's better chance of that they lost today than if they won. So we shall see.
Yeah.
80 and Rob Thompson was run out of town midway through the
Oh
season.
yeah, he's manager of the year. The Walter Matthau lookalike. Give me a break. He got away with murder last year.
Yeah,
Murder.
I don't
Wow,
know.
yeah. Those Canadians
We'll
don't stay
see.
sharp for very long.
And I don't want to be Joe pessimistic. I am the Philly fan as I identified myself, but it's not happening, guys.
All right. Well, let's from the one debacle to the next. The Sixers. So we last week's show we kind of ran through a little bit of the schedule and where we thought and so after what 4 4 games they're 1-3 and
Yeah, the
I
bad
mean
West
honestly
Coast trip.
I think we kind of said that right like, on the show when we ran through we said a successful trip would be 2-3 at this point and or
2-2.
well, yeah, two. Right, what was it? 2-2, I guess. And it's 1-3. So we were kind of pessimistic. We didn't really have them. So, what we thought. So they're kind of locked into the third seed. So no reason to talk about that. But let's talk about Embiid and the MVP race, who he was the clear-cut favorite, I guess, as we did our show last week. And since it's Jason, you probably have it. Is it still a tie, or did Joker go ahead, or?
It's a virtual tie, and then there was also a straw poll that was done, and it was done using most of the people who have a vote, and then also some other media people. And basically, it is as close to a dead heat as it could be. It was like out of, I'm just these are the exact numbers. I don't know. I think it's out of 1,000 maybe possible points. Like Embiid was 780 and Joker was 778 or something like that, and Giannis was like 640. So it's pretty much it's a virtual tie. And for me, it's a virtual tie because a lot of people are pissed off, including me, that they decided to make Embiid sit out the last game. I mean, I think that was bush league.
Silly.
Look,
I think it was weak. Go ahead.
Let me start because I'm gonna throw blood into the pool of a bunch of piranhas.
Yeah.
But look, I know everybody thinks Doc Rivers or the Sixers organization said, you're sitting out or we're playing you against Phoenix. And dude, I love Joel Embiid. Think he's an unbelievable talent. I think the decision to sit out was Joel Embiid's decision. I think he didn't want to face Joker because he already faced him and he proved himself, and he could only go down. And Embiid is a baby. He's a flat out prima donna baby who didn't want to look bad. And he probably had a sore calf and all that. I mean, I believe all that. He's probably banged up a little bit. And I think he didn't feel like, I'm not going to be 100%. I didn't feel on my game. And I think when these are game time decisions, there's no way that Doc Rivers, to me, is going, Embiid, you're sitting. And B's going, okay, yeah, no problem. I'm good with that. He's part of the decision-making. And to me, he was the one that gave the final okay to not play against Joker. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's no defending it. I'm his biggest fan. I've been saying for 4 years now that I think he's a Hall of Fame talent, and I think he is. I think he's a Hall of Fame player. I've never seen a center with his skill set ever, which is crazy. I mean, ever. There's nothing he can't do. But that was weak. I mean, you can't not play in that game. You have to play in that game. You want to sit out the Phoenix game, you sit out the Phoenix game, or whatever game, Golden State game. You don't sit out that game. You have to play in that game. And listen, maybe they would have lost the game, and maybe Joker would have got the better of him. But Embiid would have scored 30-something points on Joker. Joker couldn't stop him. I had confidence in Embiid would at least score. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have won the game, but it was just weak. I mean, Tom, you're right. I mean, there's he really did a number on him in the game in Philly, and he's not going to do that again to him. So there's no way other than going down from that performance. But you're also leaving a bad taste in everybody's mouth who's voting. I mean,
I'm surprised they got away with. I mean, I guess there's nothing they can do, but with all the rules or stuff they're trying to do with load management that the league didn't have at least come out against or say something, or I don't know. I was just a little surprised at how it all went down. Mika, you looked eager to say something.
If he really cared about a personal award like the MVP, then why would he be the one making the decision not to play? Because he's a baby? Because
I think he was afraid.
Lose points?
I think
lose points to the MVP?
Yeah, I think if he goes
by not having a good game?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, if that head-to-head match, it could be decided with that game.
There was a lot of people that I've heard say that game was going to be a major decision.
And you know what? And Embiid,
should it be?
He wants to be talked about. Embiid wants to be talked about.
But
to me,
he wants to win the MVP, but he also wants to lose the MVP so he can bitch about that he didn't win the MVP.
Oh wow,
he's
there's a lot. There's a lot of. I don't know about that. I mean, I just don't know
Dr.
about
Ruth
that.
on him. I'm telling you, chalk.
I'm not thinking the same way he might necessarily, but to me, like not playing in that game does more damage to your MVP chances than playing and just not playing well. So if the idea was, well, I won't play because it'll help me, It was stupid if that
Yeah,
was the
it was
reason.
dumb.
I
And
don't
as
think it was the reason.
as I said, 2 weeks ago, whatever, I think when Jason and I were talking about, when I said I was betting Jokic at plus whatever it was at that point, which was an early, actually too early, because Jokic jumped up to about 3-1 after another game or two before he jumped to the favorites. I'm looking right now in FanDuel, him and Embiid are both at plus 110, so even. But there had been nobody that would, there's no NBA MVP that had played as few games in the season as Embiid would have had he played every other game for the rest of the year 2 weeks ago, other than Bill Walton in 78 or whatever it was. So there's a precedent for, like, if you don't play 70 games, you don't win MVP. So not playing the head-to-head matchup and then missing another game before the end of the season, which might have been inevitable. I mean, just to me, that if I'm thinking ahead of time, I'm saying that hurts your case more than going out and scoring 15 points and looking bad. Now, maybe he thought differently, or he just didn't want to look bad no matter what it meant for the MVP. He nearly single-handedly carried them to victory against Golden State. He did not look great against Phoenix the next night. Maxey carried them most of that game. So for him not to play that third game sort of makes sense since he sat out, the second half of the Chicago game. Unfortunately, it was against the best team in the West record-wise and your major rival for MVP. That all rolled into it, to me, as a voter, would have been a worse look than going and not playing well head-to-head, because it's one game. But I'm not a voter. Kendrick Perkins is, apparently, which is terrible. But, I was surprised that straw poll Jason mentioned that it was still neck and neck. I thought that was it, because I mean that thing was pretty accurate last year as far as how it turned out with Jokic being the pretty heavy runaway winner. So that people are still have it that close, all things considered, to me was a little surprising.
I mean, you still can't take away what he's done all year, and the fact that Joker got it 2 years in a row still plays a part too. That they're looking for reasons to not necessarily vote for him as well. Jimmy D, any thoughts around the Embiid controversy?
Hell yeah, Tommy. Hell yeah. You guys are younger, and God bless you. I love to listen to this podcast because I get a lot of information that I wouldn't normally think of, nor my friends. And
that's not a compliment.
No,
Is it the straw poll or whatever that you're
Look at the
referring to?
Meeker too.
We're not young, first of all. Anyone that's calling me young, God bless you.
Yes, thank you. But the Joe Embiid thing is listen. I don't know why he did not play on Monday night. I don't get it. I understand that he probably could have been the MVP probably before. However, Jokic plays 39 average minutes a game. This guy is a horse. And during that game that Embiid did not play, Jokic continued to play that game. Remember when they were up by nearly 20 points, they kept him in that game. I think it was a way for which that Nash or whoever that to say, listen, this guy plays in and out every night. He gives us that triple double every night. He's got us in the first playoff position every night. And Beebe does not do that. I know how good Joel is. The dude didn't touch a basketball until he was about 14 years old. Think about that. We all touched basketballs when we were kids. This kid did not touch a basketball. However, if we're trying to win an MVP, and I don't think the Sixers should be going in after an MVP, they've got problems with Achilles' heels with Harden. They got problems with knees and calves with Embiid. And then they got a problem with a fit-in role because they don't know whether to play fast or play small or play slow with Tyrese Maxey. But the problem with the 76ers, and you guys have delineated this spectacularly over the course of the time that you've had this podcast on. The problem is, and I'll briefly do this because I don't want to bore anybody. The problem is Markel Fultz, Michael Carter-Williams, Jahlil Okafor, Furkan Kusmaz, Sean Bradley, Maurice Spice, Jaden Springer, Laundry Shamat. Should you want me to go into the second round to tell you how bad they can really get? This team
butchering the names on
stinks at
purpose
drafting.
just to make
And
it more
then,
comedic.
and then we have to look at Jason Tatum, Mikhail Folks, and Drew Holiday, all in our division. And Drew Holiday, by the way, it's only about 10 years later. Are you kidding me? You just gave away your talent. What the hell do you expect? If we can get past the first round, which, and if I believe, and I don't want to quote anybody or put words in anybody's mouth, but Jason, I think you said this, the Nets are a dangerous team. They're young. They're strong. They just been putting together and they just played together. Could you imagine a first round loss to them? And with Mikal Bridges on that team, oh my goodness. I know I sound like the anti-Philadelphia guy tonight. I'm not, but I'm just trying to be real, guys.
Colangelo's burner account is blowing up right now.
I was waiting for
Yes.
Jeff Rulin's name to get mentioned, but we
Yes.
didn't get that
Trying to
far.
go back that far.
Joker doesn't play a physical game at center. He's, believe it or not, he's not like the defensive stalwart that people that don't watch basketball think he may be because of his rebounds. He's just a big dude who gets rebounds because he's a big dude. Joel is all over the floor with his defense. That's the big difference between the two when I'm thinking about MVP. And I don't know that this game should really matter. I understand, that in the media it was going to be talked about to the nth degree. But if the guy was actually hurt and felt like, hey, man, if I go out there and play my hardest like I always do against this cat who's not really the most physical cat, but I have to keep up with him, and I injure this calf worse than it's already injured, then where does this put us as a team going into the playoffs? I don't really care, honestly, about what happened in this game against Denver. I don't care. I don't know that it should affect his MVP votes. We'll see if it does. But in the end, I said, I don't know how many podcasts ago we talked about this when we were talking about the Sixers after the Eagles season was over. I said, I have really no problem with them resting him towards the end of the year if they have no way
And
of.
you're not going to win the MVP.
Yeah, and Meeker,
Who
the
cares?
part,
I don't
yeah,
care.
but
You don't
right.
care, but Joel
Yeah.
Embiid cares.
And the
If he
part that
did,
you're,
then he would have played, right? So
No, that's
apparently
not
he doesn't
true.
the
care.
part you're
He's
missing, the
didn't
part
play
you're
because he-
missing is he got hurt in the whatever game, Chicago.
He's always
game, he didn't
hurt.
play. Then he played 2 games. He played 2 games and he was
He
fine.
did.
And then
He
he
did.
misses the game against the guy he's head to head with in the MVP.
But it
That's
doesn't
the
help
difference.
you, Jason. It does not help you to not play the game. I don't see how.
But he believes it did because of what Tommy said. Tommy was
No, I
right
don't
by
know. I
saying
think that's crazy.
it.
I think it's crazy.
Why?
I mean,
did not-
it might be what he thinks. I think that line of thought is insane,
it's
like I
insane.
said, but
it's wrong. But
I
there's
mean,
no other
Embiid,
reason
you
why
guys
he
are
wouldn't
giving
have
him
played the game.
too much credit. The guy, he's a loon. He is.
There's
I mean,
no
he
other
really
reason
is if
why
you watch
he wouldn't
him.
have played the game. There's no other reason. There's
And
no
I
other
didn't come to
reason.
this conclusion until I start going off. I think he wants to lose so he can bitch about losing. I swear
Wow.
to God, I
Listen,
think I think he gets more joy out of that than he does winning.
I
the
think
MVP.
he's a
I sure
better
hope that's
overall
not true.
player. I think he's a better overall player than Jokic. I do.
Oh, it's not even close. I mean, Meeker
he
said,
is.
his defense separates him from mostly
Uh,
any of those guys in the
Yeah.
MVP race.
He's arguably a better defensive player than an offensive player. Yeah, I
Should have
mean,
won the MVP 2 years ago.
He should have won MVP.
Yeah.
But I think he was. I think that he's a little loopy, and I don't know if it was totally his decision, but I think he had a part in it.
Yeah, I think he has a part in it. There's no way he's
Yeah.
not.
So Doc goes to Embiid and says, "Listen, we're three or 4 game stretch here on the road. Take your game that you're not going to play in because we want to rest you."
They
at
are
least one of
locked
them.
into the 3 seed. There's no
Right.
games that matter to them anymore.
But
Sure.
Right.
keep in mind they lost 2 games. So the 2 games he plays in, they don't know they lose them yet, right? If they
Which
win,
made that decision a little easier because now by winning the game, you're not going to get any further, right? I mean, that's the way I look at it.
I mean, I think,
don't know.
look, it was going to be a tough matchup. If they pull that Warriors game out, I think it's more likely he plays in the Denver
Right.
game.
These games don't matter anymore.
but, you
That's
know,
why
it's
they
like-
almost lost last night. That game didn't matter.
I think he was advised not to play, or they said we're not sure, and he definitely didn't argue with them. I don't know that he went to them and said I don't want to play, but
Right.
3 games in 4 nights. You're playing at mile high altitude, which should be illegal. That's that's a huge advantage. Whatever, sure, but to the home team,
Put it this way.
his heart. Look, if he said there's no way you're not stopping me from playing, he would have played.
Right. That's what I was
But
going to say.
that that he obviously did not say that and did not have that much fire in him to go play that night. Like they wouldn't have physically restrained him like they did when supposedly he wanted to play when he had to wear a mask and he was like, "Let me play," and they're like, "No, you could die" or whatever. Like there wasn't anything like that. So.
But Jimmy, just the 30-year-old guys, don't they play, Jim? Like if they're fully healthy and they're
Jimmy,
active, don't they
He's
play?
you're stuck in the
This is
80s.
2023.
Yeah. I mean,
load management is the thing. Joel Embiid
Listen,
will never be fully
listen,
healthy. He just
listen,
won't.
listen,
He
I-
just
be
won't.
honest.
And I love the fact that you guys are younger and you have a different approach. I love that. And maybe I am stuck, but you know what? If you don't have the balls, then you don't get the accolades. You've got to do something a little different. I would have appreciated Joel Embiid playing on one leg that night and scoring 6 points. Then I would have said you got the MVP because you had the balls to play the third night on a 4-game road
Well,
streak
guess
that
what?
you were
Yeah,
losing.
but then he would have hurt
Sat
something else by
down.
playing on one leg.
look at
Like he's made of glass.
Look at Giannis. Giannis
that's what I was
has
gonna
missed as
say.
many games as Embiid this year.
that's what I was gonna say. I'm surprised he's even in the running because he's only played 60 games so far, right?
Correct.
I mean, so he's gonna finish
you know.
with 65 games or whatever. That doesn't seem like
And
enough.
look, and B draws that attention to himself, so he doesn't get the breaks that some of the other guys are going to get because of his persona or whatever. Which is a little ridiculous because Jokic has gotten like thrown out of the playoffs the last 2 years, right? Like he put the one guy out on the kid from Philly, the twin. He put him out for like two months. His brothers are like Serbian gangsters that are threatening people.
Yeah,
like.
look, to
And
me,
he's an upstanding citizen. Like Embiid's a goof, but come on, like you're going to give this
me-
guy the benefit of the doubt?
to me, Embiid is a guy. If he wasn't on the Sixers, you would hate him. You
of
couldn't
course.
stand him. You would
Oh,
think he's
yeah.
the worst
I'm sure the
athlete.
league hates him.
He's you can't. He's a
He's a
baby.
crybaby.
this and
We
that.
talked about the other night. I would hate Nick Sirianni if he was coaching the Giants. He coaches the Eagles. I'm fine with him. It's
Here's the thing about Giannis, though. He was out with a legit bad injury for
Yeah,
an
but
extended
so
period
what?
of time.
He's
He's
supposed to
not
cut your break.
he's not sitting because of load
He
management.
sits
though.
games.
Yeah.
He sits games, Meeker.
But he
They
does-
mask
he's
him.
not
Giannis
Like
has
mask.
a ring. The guy's got a ring. No one else does. I mean, come on.
No, listen, Giannis is great too. It's just that's what they do now. These guys. That's what they do. I mean, that's
Who's
that's
the number 4 guy for the MVP right now? Maybe throw a few-
Doncic
Tatum.
Throw,
or Tatum.
Tatum?
Yeah, it is. Tatum.
maybe throw a few dollars on him as the sleeper because
He's 120 to 1.
Nah.
they don't want to give it to Joker. The other two guys, Embiid and Giannis didn't play enough games, and you know.
I mean,
I
we spent a
do
lot
put
of
money
time
on
talking
Giannis.
about this, but in the end, I mean, look, it's going to come down to them beating the Celtics, and I don't know that that's going to happen, and we're
For
going to
what?
be in the same situation in the second round of the playoffs. Because I'm,
Not
For the
I'm
season.
pissed.
We're talking MVP.
Yeah,
Oh,
of
I said we're
course.
done talking about that. I said I don't really care
alright,
about
okay.
that.
Oh, I'm
We're
sorry.
talking
Did you
about-
not have a host?
I don't see that on my run sheet.
I thought I was the host.
We
here.
spent enough time on that. I mean, what's important is what happens in the playoffs, not whether he wins the MVP. In
Of
my
course.
Of
opinion.
course.
So
But that's not what we're talking about.
Or is it,
well,
are
you can
you
talk
new-
about it as much as you
Are
want,
you
but
new to sports
point of it all-
podcasting and talking about things? Is this a new
point-
concept to you?
because it's annoying me. Because the point of it all is that if he could have gotten worse hurt, we wouldn't even be worried. We would be worried about them even beating the Nets, let alone beating the Celtics, which they're not going to do. So they're going to go out in the second round again, and then we'll be talking about whether Doc Rivers should be coming back next year. And that's the vicious
Right,
circle
but that's-
of the Philadelphia 76ers.
That's the price of tea in China. Like we don't care.
It is a
That's not
vicious
what we're
circle, that's
talking about
true.
right now.
All right. It's a non-topic, even though you want to talk about it.
It's a big topic.
All right, time for horse racing. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah.
Great.
With that, we'll say
that-
bye. We'll say goodbye to
See you,
Meeker.
Meeker.
We'll see if he
Take
gets
care,
invited
Chris.
back on the show next week. We'll have to have a production meeting.
Pleasure, guys.
Say bye to Meeker, and we'll move on. So we went long
We
with
will.
the Phillies and Sixers, so we'll run through these races
Yeah.
as quick as we can to make the show not crazy long for everybody. But so let's jump right into it. Why not jump right into it? I would say. So we'll start. What do you guys want to do? The Gulfstream pick 4? Do you want to knock out the Arkansas Derby quickly and then finish with the Gulfstream?
I
pick
was
4?
thinking in order. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but timing order is.
Yeah,
Gulfstream.
so we'll just knock out Gulfstream. We'll go down to Florida first, and then we'll move into finish off with the Arkansas
Okay.
Derby. All right, so race 11 kicks us off for the pick four at Gulfstream, which is approximately 4:38 Eastern time, and we're looking at a 7.5 furlong, non-graded stakes race. Keep in mind, at Gulfstream, 7.5 is a two-turn state and is a two-turn turf event. Um, Sorry to do this, but Jason, kick us off. I
Yeah,
knew, I know,
thanks.
I knew you didn't want to go first,
Gee,
so that's why
thanks.
you're going first.
Yeah, I mean, the race is wide open. So Clement has probably the two best horses in the race. He has the two Love Appeal and the five Breath Away. Obviously, they could both win. Pletcher's taken over the nine from, I think it was Brissett, Aunt Shirley, and he's putting Irad on. So he's also throwing the horse on turf for the first time. So uh, the unknown with the horse. The horse obviously has talent. It's Irad, who's probably the best turf rider in the world, or at least the country. So you have to use her. Um, so I mean, if you're asking me who I think's going to win, I'm going to give you 259. If you're asking me who I'm using in my pick four, I'm using everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a couple that probably can't win, but yeah,
But
who
at
knows?
that point, I'm just using everybody.
Yeah,
So,
I was along similar. The both Clements for me, I thought was interesting. So Rosario rode both the Clements. He chooses the two here, so that's interesting. Ortiz was on the one, Mrs. Astor, and actually that horse was like a trip horse that day, if I recall. So looked very impressive in breaking the maiden, but then he jumps off to the other Clement. So I mean, it just seems like the two and the five have a leg up, and I don't know that it's a race where I could see Rosario being very tactical with the two, even could be on the lead. There's not a ton of speed first look. So I mean the two to me looks like that he's Clement's moving right into a stakes race off a turf win or off a maiden win, which isn't a move he does often. So, that was a plus as well. So I would lean towards a two. See, I would be against the nine because I think he would be an underleg because of what Jason said, that you're gonna get a lot of like Irad, you can't not use Irad, Pletcher. But I mean, the horse coming off a layoff first. There's so many angles that like he's doing for the first time that 6-1, fine. I just see that horse being less than 6-1.
yeah, he's not going
So
to be 6-1.
right, so
Or
that's an
she. It's a
underlay.
she. It's a
She
she.
and it's a tough post, a wide post, and a quick comes up quick. You kind of start on the turn on the 7.5, where the inside is going to be a little bit better. So I would be two, a little bit on the five. And if you're looking for a price, and again, I don't disagree with Jason. I think it's wide open. So to use all, or I have no problems with. But just in absence of giving out horses, the one that I do think at a price, the 7 was a little bit interesting to me. Improved as a 3-year-old, improved hitting the Gulfstream turf. Yes, you're going to say ran in a maiden claim, but ran in a maiden claim. Next race brings Safi brings her back and protects her. She wins easily again, and now he throws her into a small stakes race. So the 7 was intriguing to me. 12-1, great morning line. That's another one. I don't know if you'll get 12. I think that's going to be a 5, 6-1 horse. So it's the 2 for me, a little bit of the 5, a little bit of the 7 for a price against the 9. Anybody else, could also win. Chalky,
But you're on mute.
you're on mute, or we can't hear you.
I don't know how that happened. I'll keep it shorter now. 2-5. Nothing more, nothing less.
Jimmy D, I know you're the give out one horse
One
type
horse.
guy. Where you at?
And the two horses I won't give out are the 2 and the 5. Obviously, obviously they're going to be a price. But this is Gulfstream. This is April. This isn't May. So consequently, I kind of like the 3 a little bit. I like Lopez on Owens' horse. Owens is a goofy trainer. Doesn't have many horses. He wins. He ships and he wins. I know nobody knows him. That's the reason. But he doesn't have a lot of horses. I think maybe he can just come in. This is a weak field. The 2 and the 5, it's Clements stuff. They're strong turf horses. The two's got that Spritetown. Spritetown's a sprinter. looks like he should just dominate this kind of field. It doesn't happen at Gulfstream. Sometimes you have to look at the numbers and say, okay, I understand the numbers. Now, what don't I see? If you can see the numbers that everybody else does not see, that's where you win money. You need to see the numbers that no one else sees. Very easy to read the form and come up with the graphics that the information tells you. It's difficult to interpret the information. I'm going to interpret this to say that this horse got a big race in him. I like the three. Um, Riding pretty.
Okay, and then keep in mind, turf race. So much of turf racing is trip dependent too, especially when you got guys like Rosario who loves to stay inside, inside, inside. The whole way around. If that hole never opens up or you never can get the horse
Yep.
outside, you don't get the trip. So yeah, I mean
Very
it's
good.
it's, it's always turf racing can always be tricky for those reasons. So yeah, I mean I think it shows that we're all over the place. It's definitely a wide open race. You got 3-year-old fillies on the turf at Gulfstream, so it's a race you might see a price. All right, let's move to race 12, and I'll just go around the horn. I'll go to Chalky this time since I started with Jason last. We're at mile 16, the Gulfstream Oaks, grade 2 for another 3-year-old filly race where we have seen chaos. The prep race, we saw a big price. So where are you at?
So I wouldn't argue in some ways if somebody put an all here because I think it's wide open, but I'm not going to go too deep because I just don't have a good enough feel. This will be where I get knocked out if I don't lose the first one, but I'm going to lean heavily on the 7, Sacred Wish. First time Weaver has been a successful move. I see some people smiling. I don't know if you're laughing at me or it's because you're over here. You're also picking, but I'm going to take a little bit of a shot there. Of the more favorites, I think Miracle would be the one for Pletcher to go with there. I looked at the 2, which I think, Tommy, you and I both had last time. Didn't really run well at Gulfstream. I did not pull the trigger on that, the being Cone Horse. So I'm going to primarily use 7, and then I'll have 5 on a ticket or 2 where I'm not using favorite in the last leg, which we'll get to later. But I'm going to lean heavy on the 7.
Jimmy D.
Untested fillies. We're looking at something. They're young. They're in a different racetrack. They're running a longer distance. Anything can happen. You got a distance problem with many of these horses. They have never gone this far. So now we're going to predict that they can go this far. That's a slippery slope to walk down. I kind of like anatomically. I think the horse is the one horse that's run the distance that had a little bit of a success there. Not a lot. Again, once again, it's not something that's solid. But I don't think Pletcher would put him in this spot unless he thought he could win. Um, it's who gets the distance who wins this race. I'd like the 6.
Jason.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Jimmy D there. So my write-up is it's a pretty competitive race. I'm going to give a slight nod to the 6 atomically. She's won at Gulfstream and at the distance, has tactical speed. So, she can really adapt to whatever's happening with the pace. The 5 to me is just a horse. She's got ascending speed figures, but she just seems to like not to win and finish second. So probably a horse I might try to play around with key in second. But I also was going to give the 4 a shot. Affirmative Lady. What's the name? Motion ran her in a stakes race as a maiden, so I'm sure he's thinking that she's got some talent. So at 10-1, or actually, I'm sorry, 8. What is it? Yeah, it is 10-1. At 10-1, she's anywhere around that price. I'll throw her in, but my main play will be the 6, and with a little bit of the 4, and then key in the 5 second.
All right. Yeah. So I'm with Chalky on this one with the 7, Sacred Wish. So you've seen Black Type and Weaver combine to kind of have a horse that breaks its maiden and then purchase the horse off the maiden win. They did it with Hidden Connection, I believe, last year or 2 years ago. They did it with the horse who ran really strong in a maiden race and lost. They purchased the horse privately, broke their maiden at Gulfstream, and then ran second to Malathat in the Keeneland race, and the horse escapes my name. Ran in the Oaks, and she blew the brake. And then ever since then, I can't remember the name. It was like Wish You Well or Wish, wow, something I can't. Some Wish I think was in the name. Um, but it was black type thoroughbreds and it was Weaver. So they're good at identifying horses that they are running, who have won, who are stakes caliber horses, and that's what they did here with Sacred Wish off an Oaklawn. Not this time. They stretch out well to 2 turns, so now they're stretching her out to face what looks like it's a grade two, but it's not a grade two field. I mean, it's you don't have any world beaters here. I mean, you got
Not at all.
Atomically, who's probably going to go off close to the favorite, if not the favorite by default. It's Pletcher, it's an Ortiz. You got Miracle, who's Irad, who again is going to get bet, and it's Pletcher. Um, like Chalky said, the two still has a shot, I think, but again, I mean, it's for me. I'm going to use the 7, and maybe play a ticket where I'm spreading a little bit more if I have some opinions or you see some scratches that might change. But I'm gonna press the 7 Sacred Wish, like Chalky for that one. All right, moving along nicely here. If we stay in line, we'll go to Gulfstream Park, race 13, which is a mile turf. It's the Appleton, another non-graded stakes race. So I guess I don't really know the card. I was a little surprised at the lack of like graded races in the slate pick 4, where you have, 2 of the 4 races are non-graded stakes, but it might be how it always is. But I'll go to Jimmy D. Where are we at? Another wide open turf event.
Tommy, don't be surprised that Gulfstream leaves a lack, a big card, and they lack that big card on Florida Derby Day. They've been lacking it for the last couple of years. It's sad. You would think that this is their biggest day of the year, that they should have 6 or 7 grade 1 or 2s. They just don't. I kind of look for an upset in this race. It's the Appleton. These are one of those overnight stakes. A mile there. That's a crazy course of that track. I like Churchtown. Churchtown is Appleby's horse. He's the English trainer. He's great. Hasn't had a great amount of success in the states as of yet, because he seems to have moved a lot of his stock here. But I kind of like Churchtown. He gets Siaz here, and the last race, if you throw it out, he had a lot to do with that last race. But every other race, you could see he's right on the money. He's right there, but he can get the lead here. There's not a lot of front speed. He can get the lead. He can control the fractions of this race, and if he does, I think he can get home. I know the 7 is another viable horse in this race. Chantel Sutherland's horse. It's Delgado. Delgado gives her horses that she sleeps with in the barn, literally. She just loves these horses, so he gives her these horses. She's not winning this race. I really think that this is a little bit of a price race. If we're going to get anything in this pick 4, it might come right here. And I like Churchtown, the 9.
All right, and I'll start. So to talk about the 7, to Jimmy's point, Sutherland and Delgado have teamed up for some wins at the Gulfstream meet. This is an easy horse to handicap. It's hard to handicap this horse in the multis, but it's easy to handicap the horse. If the horse is betting the will pays, the horse isn't losing. When Delgado and Sutherland get bet and will pays, and they shouldn't be, they win 100% of the time. It's the Venezuelan mafia that's down at
Interesting.
Gulfstream, and they just they
Interesting.
rule that track. Now, maybe not on a big day. Maybe that's more on a Wednesday and Thursday at Gulfstream, but Delgado and Sutherland, I was just following it, and there's horses that are like you're like, wait, why is that horse, paying so little on the pick 3 compared to everybody else? And the horse wins by five lengths. And it's always Delgado and it's Sutherland. Similar when you see what's it, Irad and is it Cretan or Crichton, whatever that one trainer's name is. Again, they're like on the regular days, but again, that doesn't help you in the multis, because if you don't know the pick 3 will pays until it's the race and you play a pick 3, it's going to be tough. But so easily to spot. I was for me, the 7 is going to be on close to the lead. The 8, 9 is going to be the lead. I actually saw a little bit of more speed, I guess, than Jimmy D saw in this race. The 4 could show a little bit of speed. Pletcher with the 6, that horse is right there every time. A horse you can't leave off. I mean, in the turf races is what 4 or 5 on the board, 2 for 2 at the distance. I read and Pletcher, but for me, I was leaning towards the 1, which if you look at the last 3 1 mile races, has won all 3. Paco on the rail and a 1 turn or a 1 mile, And then the 7. I'm sorry, not the 7. The 3. Brian Lynch has been like looking really good with his stock. He comes off a layoff, runs a great optional claim, gives a little tightener. Rosario stays on, moves him right up back into stakes company. Runs a big number off the layoff. I see an improvement there. Again, it's Rosario on the turf. Another one that, like Jason said, with Irad on the turf. Rosario is another probably neck and neck with Rosario. He does fall asleep sometimes, but he is neck and neck with Irad. So I'm going to lean 1-3. I would definitely use the 6. I just can't. That horse is just right there every time, and it's Irad, it's Pletcher, it's Florida Derby Day. So that's where I'm at. Jason?
Yeah, I'm going 3 deep here. I actually capped the race for speed too. I think a closer's going to win this race. My top pick's going to be the 5 Fort Washington. I think he's going to become a flying. But my second pick is the 3, Gray's Fable Rosario. He's going to become a flying as well. I see some speed. So like I said, they're going to be my 2, and I can't leave Irad and Pletcher off, so I'm going to throw the 6 in. So 3, 5, 6. I'm going 3 deep here.
All right, Chalky.
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset as used to. As I think it's going to be a hot pace. So with that said, my co-top choices are going to be the 5 Fort Washington. Again, he's coming from the back. He's going to have to work a trip out, but he'll be flying late.
Yeah, the only thing, just because you both now, like, that horse is, I mean,
doesn't win. Doesn't like to win.
Doesn't, a mile's a little short for that horse.
He doesn't get out of the gate.
Yeah, and I watched that horse in New York a lot. I actually had, and I swear to God, I'm not looking at the PPs. I want to say Lescano broke his maiden, maybe the 3rd race of his career, because I won money on that race, and maybe I'm wrong, but
Second race.
Was it Lescano?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. I swear to God, I wasn't looking at PPs. That's just off of memory. He ran a little bit wide on the course, and one just got up on a neck, hit a pick 4 or 5, if I recall. But the horse has too much to do late, and at a mile, even with that pace, I think that would be why he would be compromised. Just throwing it out, since you guys both, had.
No, valid points. I mean, that the race that he won that you just mentioned brushed the gate. So, I mean, he has trouble starting, but he's got talent. So, my other co-top choice would be the 6, for the reasons that you guys mentioned. But there are 2 others that I would use in this race. The aforementioned 1 with Breen and Lopez. Thought that horse could have a shot. And I'm going to be using the 4 as well, who should be up there close with the 6, I think. The 4 being Striker for Carroll. I don't want any parts of this 7 unless they're the favorite in the double, which we won't know.
It's pick 3, not the double. So the pick 3 is where that Venezuelan money comes
you're not getting the CAW money in the pick 3. If anybody read that Financial Times article, very interesting, but on the automated wagering. But I mean, when there could be a pace duel or some pace compromise or hot pace, I'm not backing Chantel Sutherland to navigate that unless the fix is in. So I'm going to stay away from the 7.
All right. Yeah. One good thing about this card is these races are wide open. There's definitely money that's out there.
That's true.
Keep an eye on the scratch board, because some of these races can change with that, especially the paces that we spoke about. But wide open. And we move to probably the race that is least wide open, which is the Grade 1 Florida Derby, run at 1 1/8 miles, looking at around 6:40, which is pretty late to be running at Gulfstream. But that is how we finish. And I will let whoever wants to start us off. If you have a strong opinion or a strong comment, go for it. We'll just move from there. Take it away.
I just want to give the racing office credit for getting 12 horses, because there was like 4 as of a week ago, they were saying. So they rounded up the best of the maiden, first level allowance horses to fill the field out.
They only had to make one phone call.
Safi
Mr.
Joseph.
Safi, would you run 4 hopeless pigs in this race for us?
So I'll go quickly. Okay, Forte. Yeah. The other horse, which I think will also be mentioned, is Mage. If something goes wrong, if the 11 hole compromises Forte, I don't think it's going to make the difference here. I want Mage. And to your point about the last race, Joseph has four. Three of them, or all of them, I think, one's a maiden, and three are eligible for their first level allowance. That 11 hole could end up being the 9 or the 8 come
Yeah.
post time because some of these horses scratch out and it moves in. So I'm not going to discount really Forte on that. But if anything goes wrong, I want Mage, and that's all that can win. I did like Joseph's one horse, the 3, I believe, was Cowboy to hit the board. He's been improving each race. I mean, if you're trying to play a trifecta and you want some prices, I'd have, I'm sorry, 2, West Coast Cowboy as like a bottom of the try type play. I don't want any of the Yakatine coming from Baffert's in any of these races we're talking about, so that's it.
Yeah, the 2 is probably the only real horse that Safi Joseph would have run in this race. The other ones are his throw-ins. They fill the field, so we'll see. You might get some scratches. I wanted to be against Forte, seeing the posts, and I was like, well, maybe that Mage, whatever you want to, however the name is pronounced, was dominating in his one-turn maiden race, blew the break in the next race, and then was rushed into the pace of the last race and ran well. But then you look, I mean, and if the race is run how it's supposed to be run with these horses, there's a good amount of speed, which was a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
Seeing how a lot of the preps have not been speed, and then that's where you're like, wow, if there's speed, I can't see any way Forte is going to lose this race. So if all 14 go or 13 go, whatever, close to that number, and the speed is how it's supposed to be, Forte wins like not even under an easy gallop. If for whatever reason you get scratches and some of those Safi speed horses don't go, uh, I can see Mage wiring the field. Who was that goofy maiden horse that wired the field that everybody loved, that was uh, fell out of the gate a couple times? I think in the Preakness that didn't it was like 45-1 or 50-1 or 70-1 and won the Florida Derby wire to wire.
Oh, is that the horse that threw the jock?
Yeah, in the Preakness, I think, one of
Yeah.
the big. But
It was, yeah.
and that was
I
another
can't
one
think of
where the horse got an easy lead and just it was a maiden.
Bodie something, right?
Bodie, yeah, it was Bodie something for sure. Got an easy lead and just kept going. So Forte could get compromised that way if that were to happen. But if the race is run how it's supposed to, it should be a good pace, and I see Forte blowing it away. The rest of you, Jason and Jimmy D, take us home for the Gulfstream.
Okay,
Yeah,
Jim.
Jace.
All right. Yeah, I mean it's same thought. I mean I'm gonna obviously key Forte to win. I'll probably take that Madge and use like I'll try to do a trifecta, or maybe even a super where I key Madge second, or then I key Madge third, and then just try to fill in with some prices second and fourth, and try to make something out of the race. But in my pick 4, it's Forte, or I'm losing because I don't know who else could win.
Jimmy D.
Guys, we named the obvious horse in this race. I can't go much further, but I'm not going to bet him. I'm not going to bet him because it's Mike Rapoli, and he makes me sick sometimes. But I'm going to give you. I'll give you a sleeper in the race. I'll give you somebody that we're very high on, and this guy has been down on his luck. He lost about 140 pounds, but he's also lost about $140,000. Cyclone Mischief. I kind of like Dale Roman's horse. I think he's got a shot in this race. He's been looking for this spot for a long, long time. The horse is underachieved. They had spectacular hopes for this horse. He's actually taken Gafaglione off and going to Castellano. I don't know what he's trying to do. Maybe he wants a stronger hand or an older hand just to kind of settle this horse down. I don't know what it is, but I don't think it's going to be a clear path to the goal line for Forte. I just don't see that. I know the horse is run spectacularly. The Florida Derby is a great race, guys. I jotted a couple facts down about the Florida Derby. They started this dude race in 52. But, the only horses that have won both the Florida Derby and the Kentucky Derby. Think about that, the Florida and the Kentucky. They had Always Dreaming, Nyquist, Orb, Big Brown, Barbaro, Monarchos. They've won both those races. Who's controlled these races? Johnny V. He's won 5 races here. 5 times he's won the Kentucky Derby. Did it with Quality Road, Orb, materiality, always streaming and audible. And when he got off of Orb, Joe Rosario ran him and won the Kentucky Derby. Johnny V won in the Florida Derby with him. Spectacular Bid was the only guy that won all three Florida preps. You know those preps, the Holy Bull, Fountain of Youth, and then this Florida Derby. Pletcher's won a lot of these races also. It's a difficult race to get away from Pletcher, but what kind of value do we have here? We always try to give the people the pick four. I was the guy that picked against Flightline, in that last Breeders' Cup race. What kind of value do we have? I'll take the shot. I'll take the shot with Romans, and I'll take the shot with the Into Mischief. Cyclone. That's my pick.
So I saw a picture of Dal Romans today, and the only thing I could say is he lost 160 pounds.
You found it?
Whew.
Did you find it?
I mean,
He did.
He had to be almost incapacitated with those 160 pounds if that's what he looks like now.
It's no small feat to go from $6 to 450, but
Whew.
Think about that. Think about his partner, Tammy. You got to give her nothing but credit.
She's like,
Oh, she's
5
like,
foot, isn't
yeah, not even.
Yeah.
She's a tiny girl.
well, he did lose some. Was a couple years ago he lost some weight because wasn't he fist fighting Indian Charlie or something, and his pants were dropping because he had lost weight and he couldn't.
Yeah.
He didn't have him resized or whatever. He couldn't keep him up.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That was the
He's
main
a
event
he's
of
a
the party.
character. Yeah. You
All right,
know,
let's finish. Let's knock out this Arkansas Derby as we're at the hour 16 mark. So I do think Gaffleone probably chose here instead of maybe Bomb Cycling. I don't know that, but I know he is riding at Oaklawn. So that could be answer some of Jimmy D's questions, but I do not know the answer to that. I just know he is riding here tomorrow, Saturday. Chalky, Oaklawn. We're looking at a 6:50. What's that? 7:50 our time, Eastern time. Jeez. Mile and a 8th Arkansas Derby, Oaklawn Park. Vic Stauffer will not be on the mic if you were expecting to hear him. But Chalky, can you give us your opinion here?
he might be grabbing something else, which is why I got in trouble in the first place instead of the microphone. But I'll take a page at Jimmy's book. I'll give you one horse. I'm going with the 6, Angel of Empire. Cox impressively won the Risen Star, and third place horse there, Two Phils, came back to win the Jeff Ruby Stakes last week in impressive fashion. Cox split him and Instant Coffee up. Instant Coffee was a no-show in Louisiana Derby, but running him here, Cox is obviously has some confidence in him. I'm not crazy about any of the other horses that look good on paper, but I'm just going to go with the 6.
All right, and Jason.
yeah, I'm gonna go too deep here. My top pick's gonna be the 7, Rocket Can for Mott. He's got ascending speed figures. When being stretched out, I think he's gonna sit a good stalking trip.
This is going to be marked not for children on
That's
YouTube
true.
this week.
You might have to or bleep me.
I think there was
Well,
a
the
couple questionable.
That's true. No, I think he's going to sit a good stalking trip behind the 3 Harlow Cap. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to probably use the 3 also because I don't see a ton of speed in the race. And if 3 gets an easy lead and keeps on going, I think he's got some talent. I think he could win the race. So I'm 7-3 here.
All right, Jimmy D.
I like the 8. I like Reincarnate. And that's that Yak Teen's horse. That fake Babby Baffert horse. He's got a lot of front speed. I think he had a brutal trip in the last race in that Rebel that he ran at Oaklawn Park on February 25th. I think if he can get the lead and get it a little bit out on his own, he should be fine. Rocket Can is a good horse. There's Angel of Empire. These are all your Derby horses. But at this time of the year, there's always somebody else that steps up. You guys have mentioned Harlow Cap. Harlow Cap could be Asmussen's other horse. Asmussen's got a couple of them, just like Pletcher. Asmussen's got that Disarmed. I gave you Shopper's Revenge last week, and let me say this to our legion of fans that this podcast without Jimmy D. They did much better at horse racing last week with that King's Barn. That was a great pick. I think Jimmy Chalk had disarm. You know, I had given Jason just through conversation. I wasn't here. Shopper's Revenge. I wasn't bad either. It was a 19-1 shot that hit the board. But
And the
King's
the
Barn
panel
and disarm were great.
they also like Jace's
Yeah,
end or
that was
Yeah.
my other
whatever.
horse.
So I mean that's the
Jason's
superfecta
Road.
We
right
could have
there.
crushed
Road.
that super.
we made no money
Yeah.
out of all that, but we had good opinions.
Yeah, but I think your opinions were right there. I give you nothing but credit for it. But in this race, I'm going to go a little bit differently and get away from that favor.
All right.
Yours.
Yeah, I looking at this field, there's nothing special here. I know you mentioned Harlocap, you mentioned Angel of Empire. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much of those fairground horses this year really were locked and loaded, and they're coming out of those races. Rocket Can, I mean, is I think Mott clearly is stating that horse can't beat Forte, so he moved him away from Forte. Doesn't mean he can't beat this field, but um, yeah, I mean, I'm not usually on the Baffert Yakatine type, movement or whatever, but yeah, it's a horse that I think he was one of the best Derby prospects in the Baffert barn. Moved to Yakatine, completely blew the brake, had a god awful trip. Now the race did collapse as your first three finishers all came from behind, so blowing the brake and forcing the run that way may have been beneficial, but the horse also doesn't like to run from behind horses and still was able to run a good third. So when Johnny V puts the horse on the lead or close to the lead, and the horse still has that same finish, I think it's a race that he's going to win. And in years past, if Baffert trained this horse, we would all be picking Reincarnate because Baffert doesn't lose at Oaklawn. Now that it's Yakatine and you don't really know with all that movement, definitely changes things. So I'm going to go back to what works and use the 8 Reincarnate. But the ones that you guys said I have no problems with can definitely finish underneath. That Red Route 1, I think if you're getting 3-1, that's a super underlay. Adding blinkers, I mean, that's a horse I would be
I
against.
like horses that are going to close from that far.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
at 3-1, that's awful. And and I think the board's going to show. I don't think that horse will be 3-1, and I don't think Reincarnate's going to be 5-2. I think Reincarnate's going to be the favorite at a much lower price.
Yeah,
but
I'll just say this about the California. I don't think much of the California horses this year. So if they're shipping some of these east, I don't think they carry the same weight that they might have before. And Baffert's horse was the Arabian Night. He had him in Oaklawn, then had to pull him back because now he's off the Derby trail. So this is kind of like the second cut, which again, like you said, still could be good enough.
Yeah, but in years past,
they're not showing anything.
He would always win Oaklawn with his second fleet of horses. Because he would keep his top horses
Yeah,
out
in some
instead.
cases. Well, I mean, it depends. Well, timing wise, don't forget too. Arkansas Derby changed the timing of where it fits in the Derby trail because Farrow ran in Arkansas because
Yeah.
it gave him a little more time off before that race. But this used to be 3 weeks out, and now
Yeah,
it's
but,
5.
like,
So
3 years ago, he won with like that. Was it the one that Rosario was on? That horse wasn't any good. He won the race with.
oh yeah, he won. Didn't he won the both legs and got disqualified both legs in the COVID year or whatever, didn't he, or something? But
yeah, it sounds right.
so.
All
For
right,
sure.
and I didn't ask that. I actually don't have one. I wasn't able to put one together. But did anybody have a pick 4 that they wanted to give out for Gulfstream, or are we just riding with the horses that we kind of said and playing it? Leave the people to play it as they will.
I can give you a quick one.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so $52 total. This is a pick 4. So this is first one's a $5 bet. 2-5 with 7 with 1-4-5-6 with 11. That's $40. Second ticket is a $1 ticket. 2-5 with 7 with 1-4-5-6 with 4. That's $1, $8. And then final ticket, 2-5 with 5 with 1-4-5-6 with 4. So that's only playing Forte in the one ticket, but that's playing the favorite possibly in that second leg. 50-cent ticket, that's $4. So 52 total.
All right, and Jimmy D, I know you like to sometimes give like your best bet or best play of the races.
No, but
we talked
I
about.
will give you. I'll give you a 50-cent pick 4, Tommy. Simply that we'll try to get some value out of it. We won't exclude the favorite, but we will certainly include live horses that I think I give you a 2-5 with the 4-6-5-8, with the 6-7-9, with on the last leg the 4-10-11. It would be a $36 ticket. If that wins and we can eliminate some of the favorite, we might have something there.
All right, and because Chalky does not put his video up and we have a photo, I literally saw his head explode when Jimmy D said we're going to exclude the favorite in this pick four. So unfortunately, the folks won't be able to see it, but we got to see it, so it was nice. Just some housekeeping. Next week we're planning on doing two shows. We have our Masters show Tuesday. Unfortunately, our regular Chris Roselli is not going to be able to join us. He's a fan favorite, but we're working on solidifying some other special guests, and who knows, might even get somebody. I don't want to say it, but the Golden Bear. That's what I'm hearing. But we'll see who we can get. And then I think Friday we're planning on doing another Derby show where we have a couple big preps again. I guess in Santa Anita, there's a couple across the country.
Bluegrass.
Bluegrass, the wood.
Bluegrass
Yeah,
in the
that's
wood.
right.
Yeah.
So we have two shows planned. So make sure you watch that and follow us on Twitter at Broad Street Hustle. This was episode 47. Thank you. Have a good night.
Stay well.